Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Country music superstar Maren Morris rocks Merriweather Post Pavilion in Columbia, Maryland this Thursday night. We spoke about her biggest hits from My Church to Rich to the Middle, as well as her newest album, Humble Quest. Maren Morris, hey, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP in DC.
It's good to be here virtually.
Yeah, nice to meet you virtually. My wife's seen you at 930 Club and the Anthem around here. It's all operated by the same company, IMP, as Merriweather. So what do we got? We got Humble Quest Tour here, the name of the new album with your husband, Ryan Hurd, Circles Around Town. Is it mostly that, or are we going to hear greatest hits?
It's a little bit of both. I am playing a lot of the new record because we're touring this record. But yeah, I've got a lot of songs from my previous albums. So yeah, we play a good mix of everything.
Awesome. Well, whenever I have someone famous like yourself on, I always love to tell our listeners how you got into this racket to begin with. I know you were born in Arlington, Texas in 1990, something like that. What did you listen to when you were growing up? Were you a big country fan of, Garth and all those people back then? Reba?
Yeah, I think it was like late 90s by the time I really started getting into like modern country music, because I grew up on a lot of like Dolly, Loretta, Hank Williams, Patsy Cline. But yeah, late 90s was sort of the Chicks, Shania Twain, Faith Hill, Martina, like that era for me. So that's kind of when I decided these are my people.
These are my people, to quote a different country song. All right. Well, how old were you actually when you started writing songs? So, when you made that mental shift from country fan to I'm going to actually start putting pen to paper.
I think I wrote my first song on guitar at 12. So yeah, that kind of kickstarted my love of songwriting and haven't really slowed down since. I mean, I'm not like the best guitar player by any means. I probably should be better at this point, but I know enough to write to. But yeah, that's kind of when I first started really falling in love with the creation or the creative process.
Could you throw out a early song title or two? What's one of your early babies that never even made an album, or maybe it did, but.
Oh my God. I mean, it was probably so cheeseball. I think it was called Living in the Moment. That was the first song. I actually entered it into a songwriting competition at my elementary school, and I won first place. So maybe that gave me the confidence to continue doing this as a profession.
All right. Living in the moment with all the elementary school kids were singing Living in the Moment. I love it. All right, cool. So then obviously, you moved to Nashville, but it really wasn't until your third studio album, Hero, in 2016, that was the really big breakthrough. Tell me about those early days sort of toiling away in Nashville before the big breakthrough.
Yeah, I moved to Nashville almost 10 years ago, and I didn't really know anyone. I just wanted to write with whoever would write with me. And I was hustling and just trying to get into writing rooms and learn as much as I could because I had written a bunch of songs prior to moving to Nashville, but Nashville is just such a different game. Like you co-write a lot. It's all about collaboration. That's how I've met, most of my friends now is through those weird blind date co-writing rooms.
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of what I was doing for the first few years, was just being a student to the Nashville writing method. And but I still to this day believe that the best songwriters in the world live in Nashville, Tennessee. And whether you're writing country music or it's a lot more than country. In Nashville, I don't think people realize that it's a really rich music culture. And so yeah, it's an amazing place to kind of put your roots down.
Oh yeah, Nashville has exploded across all different genres. Well, very cool. Well, of course, then the big breakthrough album we mentioned is Hero, and I guess that first lead kickoff single there that really made you famous was My Church. Talk about how just that song is almost about your it's a spiritual sort of riff, but it's finding salvation in music on that highway FM.
Yeah. Yeah, and I still get really emotional when I sing it in my shows because, it's at the end of the day, if you strip away all the touring, all the flash, all the the glam. I do really feel like just driving around in my car, listening to whatever's on the radio and feeling just, in the best terms, insignificant. Because you just feel so anonymous in your car, like no one's watching you. And that, I feel like that's such a freeing feeling. And so, yeah, that's kind of my spiritual place, is driving and listening to music.
Well, speaking of driving, I'm sure you were driving an 80s Mercedes. Was your other hit after that? What, talk about how sort of you were able to, capture a whole generation of people, our age, 90s baby and an 80s Mercedes. Do you think your fans just sort of latched onto that and said, she's writing about me and my life?
I mean, I didn't think that was a very worldly, like ubiquitous feeling. Like I just personally liked the Mercedes in the 80s, and it also rhymed. I'm not gonna lie, like sometimes we just do it because it rhymes. But yeah, I feel like that's such a, I mean, to this day in my show, like such a fun song to sing. And yeah, I feel like generationally there's a lot of 90s babies in the crowd. So yeah, it's it's just funny to have a song so silly like mean something to people.
And then you go from silly to total heartbreak, and I could use a love song on that same album. To me, do you think that's what country music does best, is a song like that, talking about, you're almost like a jaded heartbreak in that song?
I was jaded when I wrote this song. I was going through a really painful breakup that was the soundtrack to this record being made. And yeah, I was not in a very loving space. So that song, I could use a love song, really was born out of me just going through this really bitter end. And but like having some glimmer of hope that maybe someday I could find love and some relationship again and trust someone again. But yeah, I feel like that's why that song is so heart wrenching, is because, we've all been there. We've all gotten to the end of something that you thought was going to be, that you thought was going to go the distance, and then it just crumbles. And you're like, why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we like put our hearts through this?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you captured it in that. And then rounding it out on that album, the most fun on that album was Rich, La Da 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 Dee Dee Da. Talk about how when you get on stage, is that one of the best moments where you get to go, shit, I'd be ready when you get to just let the S word fly.
Yeah, I think that's my calling card, is like the word shit is in several of my songs. Yeah, it just feels really good off the tongue. Just saying, screaming shit at a crowd and them screaming it back at you.
Yeah, you give us license to all sing it. Well, you mentioned how Nashville is not just country these days. It's all kinds of genres, and you proved it when you recorded that collab with Zedd and Gray, The Middle. It is one of the most catchy songs probably of the last 25 years. Talk about how you think that song sort of helped you reach maybe a new audience, a crossover audience, and brought them into maybe your country stuff too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of us, like Zedd or myself, could have predicted that song would go where it went. I mean, it just went into the stratosphere, and it was everywhere sort of overnight. And I remember going on tour. I was opening for Niall Horan right after The Middle came out, and we were touring not just the States, but we were touring in South America and Australia, and we would like hear The Middle on the radio in Brazil and Argentina. And I was like, holy shit, like this song is so much bigger than country music. Like I've just come from a very insular world, and with pop music, it's just insane how worldly it is. It's just everywhere. And so yeah, I think it did open my music up to like a new fan base for those who hadn't heard of me. They're like, who's this Maren Morris chick on this Middle song? And then they go back and like go into my previous work. So it's really cool. I love the borders coming down in genres, and just people being able to enjoy good music for what it is and not worried about like what classification it's under. So yeah, that song definitely changed my life in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. Changed a lot of lives. And all those new fans flooding in from other genres got to then check out your next album, Girl. Talk about, obviously it had the title song Girl, and then The Bones, which is such a deep, great song, romance and love from a whole different angle in that song, relationships. But talk about how, just you think you would evolve by the time you did that album.
I mean, I definitely had a little bit more credibility going into album two for me, just, everything that happened in my first record with my church and 80s and the middle even was such a whirlwind. And I feel like with Girl, it was just continuing that process. We never really slowed down, honestly, till COVID. So I was going very hard for many years. And then, when I started writing Humble Quest, it was like in the thick of us, not being able to tour. So that was kind of the first record I could write in a really like unstressful place and not having to rush because there was just no expectation or deadline. So I feel like of all my records, Humble Quest is definitely the most calming because it came from a place of like a lot of self-reflection. And, I had my son at the beginning of 2020. So I was also kind of grappling with this new motherhood going into this record. And yeah, so it was a lot of self-growth plus, a pandemic. So yeah, but it's some of my favorite music that I've written thus far.
So yeah, sort of just final seconds then. You mentioned, Humble Quest, and that's what this tour is about. So let's wrap up full circle on that. How much of a joy has it been to, you're getting to write songs with your husband and play with him, Ryan Hurd. You're writing songs like Hummingbird about, you're being a new mom who, now he's a toddler. And also with this whole family friendly vibe backstage, you're playing pickleball on tour. Is it a fun family vibe with all of that coming to fruition?
Yeah, I mean, my son is 2 now. He's on the road with me. He's actually at the zoo right now. But yeah, it does feel very different from previous tours because now I've got my son out. We're headlining these like amphitheaters. It just feels really special to be able to bond with not just like my band who I've been close with for years, but also like the crew. And yeah, pickleball has been good team bonding.
Awesome. Well, we'll let you get back to the pickleball. Again, everyone, it's Maren Morris, Superstar, coming to Meriwether Post Pavilion in Columbia, Maryland on August 4th. So get your tickets now. Hey, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you. We can't wait to come back and headline Meriwether.
All right. Be well.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.